This is from Mohamed Okda, who's the Director of Insight into Crisis, and he joins us now from Chicago. Well, thank you, Mohamed, for joining us here on this latest breaking news coming from Syria Idlib. Well, the highest death toll in an instance for Turkey. 22 soldiers have died now, have been killed in Syria's Idlib province. The number of the death toll might increase, and we know that many are injured. What's your take?
Well, it's have been quite a predictable event to happen. Syrian regime troops have been operating in the same area for a while, and very close proximity to each other, and in support of different sides of this civil war. I think it's quite a provocation from the Syrian regime or their backers, the Russians, against Turkey, to push Turkey into a reaction that might be unfavorable for everyone on the ground right now. Turkey have been hosting north of 3 million refugees within Turkey's border, and there are at least 4 million people in Idlib who might be refugees. At least 2 million of them are imminent refugees if the situation escalates. And Turkey have been trying to work around it, to try to calm the situation in Idlib and provide some kind of a buffer zone to these people. But the Syrian regime and, of course, the Russian backers have been keen into taking Idlib as the last stronghold of the opposition in Syria, in northern Syria. And we see in the operation where they take Khan Sheikhoun and Ma'arat al-Nu'man and, of course, Sarakib. Turkey successfully, or the Syrian rebel, with the backing of Turkey, successfully took Sarakib back yesterday, and it has definitely aggravated the Syrian regime and Russia, thus having this serious escalation and attack on Turkish troops. Unfortunately, the numbers, as you said, are 22, and many are critically injured, so we expect that to rise quite a bit, and Turkey would have to respond very seriously to this provocation, and I expect them to show a show of force, a major show of force in Idlib in the next few days. I would say even outside of Idlib, against the Syrian regime, to give them a very strong message that the attack on Turkish troops and such an escalation will be unacceptable. And of course, we heard the news of Turkey talking to NATO and talking to the US. Unfortunately, I do not expect a major backing to Turkey from the United States and European allies in this conflict. Turkey will have to go on their own into this conflict with very limited backing from the West. Particularly vis-a-vis the air defense system like Patriot system and other needed systems to completely protect Syria, to protect Turkey from any aggression either from the Syrian regime or from the Russians for the next few weeks.
Now, Turkey always emphasized that it wanted to keep to this political solution and not the military solution, as we know that there's a big humanitarian crisis there in Idlib, very dire situation there, as also the call gets underway. So you are saying the response has to be harsh in this sense. So how much more do you think it can escalate?
It can escalate to a wide-scale war. I would not be surprised if Turkey declares war officially on Syria after this escalation, and it can really go out of hand. And we know, of course, Syria has backers such as Russia and Iran and other countries in the region, and this could be and one element of a major regional power struggle and a readjustment of power in the whole Eastern Mediterranean. We know about the involvement of Turkey and Russia and Egypt and UAE and Libya, and of course the current rapprochement between the Syrian regime and Arab Gulf countries on security, on intelligence, and Egypt as well. So it is going to be a conflict on multiple fronts, and everyone will try to undermine Turkey in this struggle for dominance and power play in the Eastern Mediterranean. And Turkey, we have seen over the last 5 years, had gone every possible diplomatic avenue and diplomatic talk, either from Geneva to Astana to Berlin, and of course bilateral meetings across the globe to try to solve the Syrian crisis in a amicable way for the Syrian people, particularly. But this hasn't been fruitful because of the sabotage of countries who did not want this conflict to end, such as Russia and Iran, except, of course, for the winning of the Assad regime. And Turkey would not like that, particularly with the current high human cost of over 500,000 people dead in Syria and millions and millions of people, refugees outside of Syria. And Turkey took the major burden of that war from the civilian humanitarian point of view. And basically, the politics and the economy of Turkey and the whole social and economic situation in Turkey cannot sustain having more refugees pouring out of Syria into Turkey right now.
Well, thank you very much for that, Mohamed Okda.